I think it's a little bit too easy to just say that Star Wars is dead because the Acolyte killed it. I know that a lot of people are saying that. There's nothing against people like The Drinker, for instance, or Jeremy Johns, or any of these other YouTubers that are not Star Wars specific YouTubers that make this claim that it was the Acolyte that did it. It really wasn't. And I think it's easy to blame the Acolyte because the Acolyte was the worst thing that Star Wars has possibly made. I'm not even sure if that's true. I do actually think that The Last Jedi really was that bad. And I think The Last Jedi, in my opinion, was probably the worst thing that they've made as far as destroying the lore and destroying the continuity of Star Wars. I think that The Last Jedi probably did that. But as far as vanity projects are concerned, and as far as trying to get your ultra partisan message across to the audience, the Acolyte obviously is the worst at that. But I don't think it's what really killed Star Wars. Now, to be fair, I think that Disney has actually made a few things that are good. Rogue One is pretty good. Those last 4 episodes of the last season of Clone Wars is really good. Maybe the best thing that Disney has actually made. Objectively across the board, what most fans can probably agree with is that those last 4 episodes are truly that good. The first season of The Mandalorian is actually pretty good. Now, I actually do have some disagreements with maybe the fans in general that season 2 was really good. I don't think season 2 was good at all. I think seeing Luke at the end of season 2 in The Mandalorian was awesome. And I think that most of the episodes leading up to that was not awesome at all. I actually didn't like it. And then I would say that Rebels is something that they did that was great. And I know not everybody likes that show, but for those of us that do, we love it. So to be fair with Disney, there has been a lot of things that they've made that are really good. So it's not like it's been all bad. But the main movies have always been the main focus of Star Wars, and those are bad. And that's done a really good job of destroying the franchise in general. But even still, I would say the last nail in the coffin, it was not the Acolyte. I would make the argument that the very last nail in the coffin, the one that ruined it for everything, was actually this show. Now, Ahsoka isn't the worst thing that Disney has made, and I'll admit that. But just because something is the worst doesn't mean that it's the thing that ruined a franchise. Oftentimes, I think that franchises that are kind of dwindling away or dying off, I think that they die a pretty slow death because the fan base wants it so badly to keep going. And I don't think Star Wars is any different. It's the biggest franchise, right? It is the franchise of franchises. The reason why franchises are a thing in the first place is because of Star Wars. And I would make the argument that Ahsoka, while it wasn't the worst thing that they made, was Disney's last chance. It certainly was for me. Now, for the last couple of years that I've had this channel, I've perused a lot of comment sections. I've watched a ton of videos, some of them from ultra fans and some of them from more movie critics in general. And the one thing that I think most of us all knew going into Ahsoka was that Dave Filoni was it. He was our last hope. He was our last shot that Star Wars was going to turn it around, that they were going to start to do better. And I think that he failed at that. And I think what ultimately happened was that he didn't deliver. And if all things were fair, we would say, well, it's his first live action, directorial debut. So obviously it's likely not going to be as good as it ought to be. But it didn't matter. Things aren't fair. And in the end, the show still ultimately was a girl boss show. It wasn't as in your face about it, sure, but it was still ultimately a girl boss show, and it still did do the damage to the lore in general, whether you agree with Sabine being a Jedi or not. And I think most of us don't think it's a good idea. It is something that contradicts what the original creator of Star Wars envisioned for midichlorians, for Force usage. In general, it still damages the lore, whether people like it or not. That's just the truth. And also on top of that, the show is just not that good. It's not that watchable. It has maybe 1 or 2 truly watchable scenes, and it's just not that good. The person that I wanted to see the most was Ezra. He's not even the main character. And all of this speaks to a much larger problem at Disney. And that problem is the people at Disney, they don't believe in the things that you need to believe in order to make these shows, in order to make these movies. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, first of all, it's very obvious Disney doesn't believe in male heroes anymore. They just don't. And I don't see them really changing from that. There's a lot of people that are kind of speculating, and there's a lot of insiders that are saying that Disney knows that this is a problem and they want to fix it, but that they can't fix it because they have a docket of things that have to come out first. And I hope that that's the case. But man, if I were them, I would just cut all those off, take the lawsuits as they come, and get started on making movies and shows that people actually want to watch. But in general, Disney and the people at Disney, especially people at Lucasfilm, they don't believe in male heroes. They just don't. And another problem is that Disney doesn't seem to believe in redemption. And this is kind of a more political problem, right? If you make a mistake in the world of politics, there is no redemption for you. You're just evil forever. And that's a really big problem. The redemption arc is a big one. And in Star Wars, it is one of the biggest ones. The entire story of Star Wars depends on Anakin Skywalker being redeemed for his actions. And finally, Disney doesn't believe in an ultimate or an objective good versus an objective evil. And they keep showing us that in every show that they make, that it's not about good versus evil, or it's not about the idea of these guys being good guys and these guys being bad guys. They're trying to mix all that around and to sort of justify the behaviors of bad people. And George Lucas never believed that. If you don't believe in male heroes, if you don't believe in redemption, if you don't believe in good versus evil, then you don't believe in the things that made Star Wars what it is. And you can't make it. You can't make something that you don't believe in. I think it's the reason why The Force Awakens is basically just a copycat. It's just a copycat movie, and you can tell it's just not as good as the original Star Wars. It's not as good as Empire Strikes Back. And I think most people can just tell that. And they can tell that because they're just copying the work of somebody else instead of making original stories, but that are still based in the ideas that men can be heroes, or maybe that they should be heroes, that people that have made mistakes can be redeemed, and that there is such a thing as good and there is such a thing as evil, and that those are timeless. They're across the board. And I think that until Disney has people in it that believe these things, that are making these stories, it's never going to get fixed. It's never going to get fixed. Star Wars depends on these things in order for it to work. It just doesn't work any other way. So if you really want to know what happened, in my opinion, that's really what it was. Ahsoka was the last chance. Ahsoka was the last hope that most of us had. I even made a video saying that Ahsoka was it, that this was the last thing that they had for me. And if they ruined it, then they've ruined everything. And the reason why it was the last chance was because we were hoping that Dave Filoni, who's supposed to be, George Lucas's Padawan, he's supposed to be the one who learned at the feet of the great master, who also learned at the feet of a great master, who also learned at the feet of another great master, that this storyteller was going to bring us great stories and that we were going to move away from Kathleen Kennedy. And looking back on it now, it does seem kind of ignorant. It does seem kind of silly because it just didn't happen, first of all. But second of all, if you watch interviews with Dave Filoni, it's very obvious that he's bought into this corporate culture of very partisan politics instead of just telling objectively good storytelling. And people can say what they want. They can say it's bad character development, it's bad writing. People can say all the different things that they want. But that's not it. That's never been it. We can sit here and say all day long that the biggest problem that we have is bad writing, and it's just not bad writing. You cannot write something if you don't believe in the core principles of what made it great in the first place. And they don't. You can't write about the Force if you don't even believe there's such a thing as good and evil. You can't write about heroes if you don't even believe that men can be heroes in the first place. And you can't tell this story if you don't believe that evil men can be redeemed for the things that they've done through courageous and good acts. That's what's ruined Star Wars. That's what did it. Dave Filoni was our last chance, and Ahsoka was the nail in the coffin. We knew the Acolyte was going to be bad going into it. Most of us did. I mean, look at the comments that came from before the Acolyte was even released, or look at the comments before the Acolyte's first trailer. We knew what it was going into it. We knew who these people were going into it. We knew it was going to be bad. It's not what killed Star Wars. What really killed Star Wars was that the last hope, this guy right here, he didn't deliver, and we needed him to. And until these people at Disney start to hire creators that believe an objective good and objective evil, believe in redemption, and believe that men can be heroes. Until we get that, Star Wars is going to stay dead. Anyway, that's all I got for you today. I'm the Drew Mexican. I hope I've earned your subscription today. God bless you, and I will see you next time.